and Hong Kong followed suit, triggering a financial crisis that plunged much of Asia into a depression.
In the last 2 years, you've been blamed for financial collapse of Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, Japan, and Russia.
Yeah, all of the above.
All of the above.
Yeah.
Are you that powerful?
No, I think there's a great misunderstanding.
The Prime Minister of Malaysia said that the region spent 40 years trying to build up its economy, and along comes a moron like Soros with a lot of money, and it's all over. He called you a criminal.
It's easier for him to blame an outside force than to admit that they were mismanaging their economy and their currency. The French finance minister talked about hanging speculators from lampposts. I think that I've been blamed for everything. I am basically there to make money. I cannot and do not look at the social consequences of what I do.
This man is a carnivore of the first order.
Jim Grant is the editor of Grant's Interest Rate Observer and one of Wall Street's most respected analysts. He never tires of watching Soros, in part because of the huge bets he's willing to place on his hunches.
He has always amazed the people he's worked with at his audacity and his willingness to back up his commitments with enormous sums of money. It causes the blood to drain from ordinary mortals' faces.
Like risking $2 billion in Russia. When the Russian market began falling apart in August, Soros was the country's single largest investor. He called the U.S. Treasury and asked Uncle Sam for $7 billion to prop up the ruble. When U.S. officials failed to intervene, Soros wrote a letter to the Financial Times of London saying he thought the Russian currency should be devalued by as much as 25%. A few words from Soros were enough to cause panic selling that fueled the crash.
What's it like to have a statement that you make have such serious, grievous consequences? I mean, you can, it looks to me like in a number of situations, you can take a position against a currency or make a statement, and the whole country falls apart.
Well, it's a tremendous sense of responsibility, actually. And it's also a humbling experience because I am actually trying to do the right thing, and sometimes what I do has an unintended negative consequence, as it did in Russia.
Which George Soros am I talking to now? The amoral George Soros or the moral George Soros?
It's one person. It's one person who at one time engages in amoral activities and at the rest of the time tries to be moral.
Hello Canada, welcome to the Canadian Citizen Journal. Today we're going to break down kind of the second part of the economic viability of what Trump is doing and why nations aren't getting on board with it, and why there is this huge propaganda to try and convince people that this is evil and that it's going to cost us taxpayers. When the reality is we have some of the greatest economists on the planet arguing the exact opposite, saying this is what needs to happen. And I was actually quite happy to hear Poilievre yesterday speak about this, but he's still part of the uniparty system because he kind of goes ahead and blames Trump. He's jumping on a bandwagon for votes. It's not going to succeed, especially when the liberals own propaganda. The globalist empire owns media. Soros taught a lot of these people on how you can make billions of dollars by crushing countries. This is how he made piles of money. And he uses hiding money to do it. This goes into hidden accounts where he's got lots of backdoor dealings that nobody can trace, that he has ties to all of these other businesses and corporations because they all sit behind closed doors. The exact same thing that the WEF, the people in Davos, all of these globalist conglomerates do. They don't care about you. Soros would purposely devalue currency, then bring out dark money to bet against that country, thus completely crippling it, and then being able to walk in and take advantage of the dollar's devaluation. He's done this over and over and over. Countless countries. Now, Soros has zero morals. I urge you to watch that clip in its entirety. It's from my sister channel. I will post the link below. It'll be the first link. It shows you just how evil Soros is. This is why Chrystia Freeland loves him so much. Birds of a feather flock together. Kind of opening this up, one starts to see how the global green agenda is doing the exact same thing. They are forcing taxpayers through legislation to jump onto the carbon credit system, in which doesn't profit any of the citizens. It profits Brookfield, Carney, and the global elite. In doing so, that same insiders with their political interference are putting in legislation to crush businesses within these countries. Canada should be a superpower. We should have been a superpower 80 years ago. But because of the British banking system, the war machine, we've never had that ability because we've constantly been infiltrated. We just can't get away from it, because you can't have an honest politician. You just can't. There has to be smoke and mirrors as the puppets move around to convince people one way or the other. And then, of course, you get media, in which I exposed in a couple other episodes on how CBC has been purposefully manipulating people for generations in order to get what their masters want. So you put in legislation to systematically smash and cripple industries. When their stocks fall and the companies go bankrupt, they swoop in with their little buddies. It's all backdoor dealing. And then they buy up those companies. Pick the carcasses apart. Politically, now they're not only have they crushed the country's resources, plummeting the dollar, which this is how they're going to make money. They're forcing upon, they're helping their own businesses, so their business stocks go up, plus introducing these carbon credit systems. We're seeing this in real time in this last week. It just came out that Carney, in a closed door with Trump, was saying we should get Keystone XL going. Brookfield is invested into that. When did Brookfield get invested? Well, after the industry in Canada was crushed and companies their shares had fallen. In comes the buzzard to pick apart at the corpse. What about the windmills everybody's talking about out east? Oh, the company that's building those windmills, Brookfield, is heavily invested in giving them contracts so that they can claim carbon credits. So now Brookfield isn't directly linked to the company. They are not a shareholder of it, but they're part of that string of the global elite in order to make huge profits off of carbon credits, which who's going to be paying for it? The taxpayers. You're not only subsidizing the companies to build these windmills, you are then going to have carbon taxes on said energy that are going to go into these corporations through carbon credit. So the corporation claims that now, well, we have all of this green tech, which gives us a credit score. We look good. In the meantime, crushing industry. The killer is that in the same province are some of the largest gas reserves in the world. And it comes out that they are now shipping natural gas from the other side of the world, Australia, into Canada on the east coast. Australia ships LNG 16,000 miles to Canada. This is propaganda ready as Asia demand slumps. Demand in Asia remains weak, with LNG shipments to China, the biggest importer of gas, dropping 11% in 2025. Some of the nation's buyers are reselling cargoes, adding to subdued spot demand from Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. Really? The countries that Trump just signed LNG deals with? Could that be what's going on? Where in any commonsensical mind does it suit any environmental policy to be shipping via 16,000 kilometers? I'm sorry. There is absolutely zero business case for that. Especially when, if they just drilled their holes right where they are, because they're standing on a huge natural gas field, we could be making tax revenue off of that. This could lift the actual GDP of those provinces. But instead, the government has castrated Canada so bad that we're importing it from 16,000 kilometers away. It's the same Liberal Party. Nothing has changed. But again, this is all backdoor dealings. These are all Davos crowd people behind doors who you can't find paper trails to, but as obvious as it can possibly be, 16,000 kilometers away. It takes 2 months to drill and get a well producing. 2 months. Where's the common sense in what these people are doing? This is the global cabal at work. Now, this all goes back, and again, I've talked about this for a year already. The Panama Papers, Paradise Papers, all of this. This is all corporations that are using backdoor dealings through hidden money in order to create policy to pay off debts, liens, and captive corporations within countries. Canada is one of the worst right now. This is why they appointed Carney. They brought him in, not only to protect him from going to jail, because GFAS is they're still under heavy scrutiny and possible charges down in the States for corruption. It was noted as violating American trade ethics, backdoor dealings. And this all goes into the stock market and everything, because they were purposely manipulating, trying to crush companies that wouldn't get on board or at least start paying this cartel, this mafia, money in the form of carbon credits. The whole thing is a scam. Just like Soros, which, let's dive a little bit deeper into him, and then we're going to kind of do what I normally do. We're going to bob and weave and get right into Carney and how he is purposefully crushing Canada to make billions, if not trillions of dollars on our backs.
I had a personal experience with this 5 years ago when I published something basically in here in Canada online, a piece saying that I thought that George Soros was interfering with U.S. and Canadian elections, which he was, and he is. But then I got roasted on the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation.
Anti-Semite.
Yes, but exactly. In fact, it was called the latent. I was called the latent anti-Semite by a Muslim university professor of all people, which is really
That's
shocking because
wonderful.
I am not an anti-Semite at all. I'm a Christian.
No, and to be clear,
Yeah. So why how has this happened? How was he able to do this?
he doesn't wrap himself in anything Jewish, actually.
No.
Yeah, he was born to Jewish parents. He has been using the religion he was born into as a shield.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and he did it from the very beginning. Anybody who
Now, take special note here because the similarities between how Soros works and the New World Order, what the global cabal, the green cabal has done, is the new religion is green, is this fake carbon system, even though anybody with their right mind understands that without carbon we'd be dead. Like, we need carbon, and the fact that it's 0.04% of the actual greenhouse gas emissions makes it completely irrelevant. And the whole hockey stick and all the rest of it, that's all been debunked. All of it's been debunked. They're using this new religion the way that Soros has used his saying, well, I'm a Jew, I can't be a bad person. When, like I said, when you're done watching the first link I give you on George Soros, you'll realize he doesn't care. He may be born of Jewish descent. He learnt from the Hitler regime, and by using death, fear, hate, division, hate, you can reap huge benefits off of it. The exact same thing as the Green Deal, all this fake carbon credit system.
anybody who criticizes his statement, his contributions, his actions, his initiative, his policies, is immediately labeled and defamed. And
right? And what does the Carney liberals call you? Climate denier.
slandered as an anti-Semite. So, no, if somebody says, well, Soros the Jew is so and so, it's one thing. But when somebody is criticizing his policies, which are against American interest, against free speech, against capitalism, people have the right to do that. And so not everybody who criticizes Soros, most people actually are not attacking him because of his religion, but because of his policies. So, but it helped him a lot, because immediately all the most media, major legacy media and other outlets have immediately called. Even he didn't have even to encourage them to do that. It became automatic. If you criticize Soros, you are an anti-Semite. That's it. So
and she's absolutely correct. So again, these are the comparisons that one has to understand to break down the lie that is being told to Canadians, especially with the propaganda protecting Carney. They don't care about you people. They don't care about you. We're going to scroll a little wee bit ahead here in this interview.
And already they are promoting the Open Society Foundation or other. I mean, they have the foundations and they have a huge network. Are promoting, continue to promote woke, anti-American, surely anti-Trump, funding lawsuits, encouraging all kinds of publications that are questioning this superpower now that America has with Trump. They are completely against it and against any domestic and foreign policy that the new administration is promoting. But not only here, they are involved in other countries, in elections, in Georgia, in former Soviet Union republics are a big target for them. They've been involved for a long time, and they've been involved in elections almost anywhere in order to get the candidate that will promote the global woke anti-capitalist agenda everywhere.
Yeah, I know his Tides Foundation has been very active in Canada too,
It's
closely
not,
connected to the Liberal Party of Canada. Is it? It's not the Tides Foundation.
This is huge because, as proof, and again, previous episodes, I'm talking a year ago already. Over a Barrel was a documentary that was put out. It's on my sister channel if you want. I'll include that in the links as well, because you should watch that and get an understanding of the foreign interference that was involved in shutting down our oil sector. All of these are in cahoots together. It's not just Soros. It's Brookfield. It's BlackRock. It's all of these. All of these huge corporations are involved in it. All of them use dark money. A lot of the money comes from cartels and drugs. Because they can hide their money down there, they have become interwoven with all of these, the evils of the world. They all hide down in South America, and this is what Trump is trying to break, and this is what Canadian media won't tell you. So Soros comes in, has already been pushing this propaganda. In the meantime, they've been donating money to these NGOs, to these supposed environmental, we're going to save the planet and we love people, and have infiltrated through paying a lot of different organizations in Canada. This being the same people who the media portrays as being Indian council that isn't actually a council of Indians at all. It's completely funded and paid for by Tides, the Rockefeller, all of these open society. This is all dark money that's being brought out from corrupt banking cartels that are in direct link with drug cartels, which are in direct link with the Islamic radical jihadists, Hamas. All of this, all of the evil becomes evil. All of these organizations are tied together somehow or another, and we know that. Sam Cooper, and again, previous episodes is mine as well, but like Sam Cooper's been breaking this from the Chinese interference in our elections to the money laundering that's going on in BC, the housing market. And again, that's another big factor, is that these corporations like Brookfield's one of the, if not the largest owner of homes and rental units in Canada. The fact that Carney, who's invested in Brookfield, and the more Brookfield makes when he decides to take his payout, makes more money on it, is planning and legislating the rules and regulations and picking which companies can and cannot make houses, is a direct conflict of interest. It is evil. The monies are all from hidden accounts in Bermuda, in the Caicos, in all of these third world countries that are all ran and funded on drug cartels. Do you understand how all of this is intertwined? It never ends.
The CIA discovered that Russia had hacked George Soros's Open Society Foundation Eurasia Center director. And it was that man, Leonard Bernardo, who was the head of the Open Society Institute Eurasia Center, who had said that Hillary Clinton had approved this plan to paint Trump as being backed by the Russians and Russians interfering in the election. So this was not some random anonymous source. This was the head of the Eurasia Center for George Soros's Open Society Institute. George Soros, the biggest donor to Hillary Clinton. George Soros, the biggest donor for the entire Democrat Party. George Soros, the man who personally, economically raped Russia in the 1990s. who personally claimed that his wealth was built on the back of replacing the Russian empire with the Soros empire, and it's his own institute working in tandem with Hillary Clinton in order to start Russiagate. It's unbelievable.
The annex starts with an FBI source providing 2 Russian language memorandums dated January 2016 and March 2016 to the FBI. That itself is a shocker, since most think Russiagate started in July of 2016. The memorandums detail emails from Leonard Bernardo, who headed the Eurasia desk of George Soros' Open Society Foundation, and Jeffrey Goldstein, who also worked on that Eurasia desk, to and from Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the chair of the Democratic National Committee.
So the entire Russiagate came out as a defense mechanism to try to get the media to give propaganda a tool to showcase, as opposed to what the reality of what was going on behind closed doors, the Democratic Party, Brookfield, the entire New World Order. These people are all in cahoots with each other, each working different parts of this huge web of lies and deceit, all leading to a very, very few centralized, centered people who are making, they're making decisions that make and break societies, and they don't care about you. They don't care. This entire Russiagate was, are you ready? Are you ready? Get the ball. This is how Soros works. This is what Canadian mainstream is doing. This is what a lot of the legacy down in the States was doing. 90% of all of the media down in the States were all found to be on payrolls through George Soros, the Democratic Party, or the Democratic Party's use of backdoor legislation and these different, NGO organizations in order for you not to be able to follow the money, when really they were using tax dollars to fund any network that would help the global cabal stay in power, which is the Democrat Party, the Liberal Party. These are all tied in together, all of them.
So I name. I know many people have written about terrorism, etc. But I decided no. You read about it again and again. It doesn't mean anything unless you name and identify the people who do that.
Right. That takes courage, though.
Yeah. So here is the evidence. Now, countries, governments, whatever, go out and do something. They prefer to turn a blind eye unless, they have to. They kind of don't think that they have to, and they let the funding of terrorism continue. Even now, the UN is funding terrorism. You have all kind of crazy organizations that want to eliminate the use of all kind of modern technologies because it's bad for the environment. So they are all, and they actually attack people and have demonstrations, and they destroy art pieces in the museums, etc. They are vandals, and they are funded by the UN. They are funded by the Soros organization and others like them. So, but how they usually don't get the money directly, not from everybody. There is a preference for not having direct association with them. So there are many ways to, I guess Canada actually and Vancouver has a very good name of actually knowing how to launder money. You have had several actually interesting cases there.
Yes. The Chinese are very well ensconced in.
Even before the Chinese came there. Canada.
Wow.
Canada has been very active in the Caribbean many years ago, but they have wonderful financial organizations, and but they have been very active. So
Not
I think,
good news. Not good
well,
news.
but that's what happens. I didn't make up anything, about it.
Yeah. Yes, I know.
So what she's getting at is that it's all of everything is all tied in together, but because of the way the systems are set up, especially in the last 15 years, it started kind of 20 years ago when they started realizing that they could use this green cabal, they could use the green idea in their cabal in order to crush countries, the same way as the military industrial complex, the same way as Soros and these types of people have been doing. They're learning from the past and using the propaganda. The more power that they get, they're using these powers to create new ways and less transparency for them to get away with what they're doing. Vancouver is a money laundering capital. It's globally famous. It's massively tied into a lot of the illicit banking that is going on down in South America, and all of these corporations have major ties to drug cartels, backdoor buyouts, hidden money so that you can't trace certain corporations' investments with other businesses. They can manipulate the system, and then they meet in these backdoor closed offices like the WEF and Davos, and they discuss on what they're going to do in order to take over another market, push other businesses and companies into the ground. Now, the whole idea of what Trump is trying to do is backwards to what they're doing. And he, like I said in the previous episode, he can't just come out. They've already tried to remove him 3-4 times. This is the tactics that the industrial complex use, which the industrial complex is Brookfield, Carney, BlackRock, all of these multi-trillion-dollar companies, because they've been allowed to make all of these profits, deindustrialization of countries. We've been slowly being picked apart. First thing Trudeau does is sell the gold reserves. Why? Because he wants our dollar to fail. This is what they want to do. You crush the dollar. Businesses go down, the economy goes down. They don't care about you. They come in with all of these other businesses. These huge corporations come in, start buying up all of the little businesses. Some of them, they don't even revamp. They just destroy them because it's profitable for their buddy who owns, let's say, BlackRock or let's say Brookfield. But in the end, they're all in cahoots with each other. This is the truth of what's going on. Mainstream is a propaganda outlet. It's the strongest tool that these corporations have. Everybody knows it. Nobody wants to talk about it. So back to now where Trump is fighting. What Trump's doing is the exact opposite. He's realized that all of these things are linked together. And like I said, it was the bankers' bailout that really it set him to move forward to stop this from happening again, because I think at that time the realization came all of these banks that were getting the payouts were these larger banks. Then they turned and they made legislation to make it incredibly difficult for any new banks to be formed. This is why Trump wants at Canadian banks. He wants access. He wants to level the playing field, as well as stop the money laundering. TD Bank just had to pay how many billions of dollars that they were found that they were helping drug cartels launder money. You have every single banking institution in Canada that was involved in the Panama Papers, the Paradise Papers, all of these Caribbean backdoor money laundering schemes. Brookfield being one of the largest companies in Canada to use these Caribbean style hidden money, illicit banking systems to not pay taxes, as well as they've been found to have portfolios linking them to other companies in which you can't find the trail. So what's to say that Brookfield doesn't have some type of proprietorship or share within the company that's now shipping natural gas to Canada? They may sound like the same, but they can say, "Oh, but we're not. They don't own us. We don't deal with them." How do we know that? There's zero transparency. Trump has to break through all of these huge, just massively thick walls that stop taxpayers and good governance from being able to say, "Hey, wait a minute, that's illegal. Shut them down." Canada has become one of the most untransparent, most corrupt countries in the planet. Like, period.
He blamed oligarchs and drug trafficking organizations. Now, that takes us back to Trump and his targeting of Canada, which no one seems to want to talk about. Because when you put the words oligarchs and drug trafficking organizations in the same context, you aren't just talking about the cartels in Mexico or Colombia. You're talking about key characteristics of the British Empire, which is the epitome of oligarchy. Or to put it another way, the rule of the few, which is what oligarchy means. And when it comes to drug trafficking organizations, the British Empire has been the most notorious entity in the world when it comes to making money off of drug trafficking, going back over 200 years, including the notorious Opium Wars of the 19th century. This has never stopped. It's just taken a new form. And that's the importance of Canada in this picture. It is run by the empire's favorite central banker, Mark Carney, and it is the major political outpost for the crown in North America, used for drug trafficking, as the president mentioned, illegal immigration, and terrorism. Unlike, say, someone like Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum, whom Trump accurately characterized as terrified of the cartels, Carney has actually facilitated the financing arm of the cartels in his former role as the head of the Bank of England. While no one else is picking up on the Canada angle, some interesting folks who are not exactly Trump supporters are picking up on another aspect of this, on the fact that what the U.S. did in Venezuela is not regime change. Let's start with the former head of MI6, Sir John Soros. He isn't clutching his pearls about democracy. He recognizes this for what it is. What Trump did is a demonstration of raw power that bypasses the empire's rules-based order.
Well, first of all, I think I'd be cautious about using the phrase regime change. The Americans have abducted the leader of Venezuela, Maduro, and taken him to the US to stand trial. But they are now already dealing with the regime. The army remains in power, the legal structures of the regime remain unchanged, and they're already talking to Delcy Rodriguez, the vice president who's been sworn in as the new president of Venezuela, and distance themselves from the opposition. So this isn't the sort of regime change of the sort that we saw in Iraq, and is commensurate with the clear reluctance by Trump to put large-scale forces on the ground.
Sir John admitted this operation is new territory. He noted that Washington is already dealing with Maduro's successors and that the structures of the country remain. He knows this isn't Iraq, it isn't Tony Blair's regime change. It's something else. And he's not alone. Here's John Bolton.
But let's be clear, there's a big difference between getting Maduro and removing the regime. Right now, facts are scarce, that's for sure, but the regime is still in power. And Trump, inexplicably today at his news conference, took a shot at the Nobel Peace Prize winning leader of Venezuela's opposition, Mrs. Machado, said she didn't have the trust of the Venezuelan people. So I think there's a lot of lack of clarity, to say the least, in Trump's thinking on this. And it would be a hollow victory indeed if we snatched Maduro but left his regime in place.
When MI6 and John Bolton are admitting that this is not standard regime change, and Trump's allies are confused, you know you're watching a higher level of warfare.
Trump understands that you gotta... You got to cut the head off the snake. And there's a lot more to the snake than what mainstream and, well, the schools that are run by these liberal globalists have been teaching. They've got everybody's focus on the loud noise, the ready, go get the ball, as opposed to understanding the reality of how corrupt the world has become. And if you take a look at the largest separation in between the rich and the poor, the greatest growth gap ever recorded is going on within the last 20 years, especially the last 15. Now here in Canada, the last 9 years. Because as these countries around the world have been slowly being brainwashed and selling themselves out to fictitious ideas, or promoting fear, hate, and division by flooding these countries with migrants, unchecked, unvetted, crime on the rise, all types of the violence, heated, like just the debates in the streets, the riots, what's going on. I mean, the R gangs that are occurring that media was trying not to talk about. They want civil unrest. They're trying to collapse these countries for profit. Like it's all right in the open, but nobody's focusing on it because they're blinded by the propaganda shining these huge lights of misinformation in your face. When you're dealing with corporations that are this big and you can't follow the money, your system is corrupt, completely corrupt. We've known about this, but mainstream won't talk about it. Mark Carney, Brookfield and Bermuda, the $25 billion tax question that Canada keeps dodging. It never ends. And you don't get to see the reality of just how deep the ties go with all of these different very, very wealthy individuals. It is incredibly deep.
We are having a joint initiative, and tomorrow we will announce it, between Canada, George Soros, and the UNHCR, which is an initiative to sell our privately sponsored refugee program to other countries.
This is all done on purpose. And because they own the propaganda, Canadians will never know. This is why I always say, and not just me, but other great independents out there, you need to like, share, and subscribe. I hate having to ask, but I have to. You need to get the word out. We are in big trouble.
So here's the bottom line. While the talking heads and influencers are screaming about regime change and splitting MAGA, Donald Trump just declared war on the financial backbone of the British Empire. He's targeting the offshore banking system that has funded terrorism, cartels, and the destruction of sovereign nations for over 50 years. And he's just targeted Canada for good measure. The most ironic part? The enemy understands what Trump is doing better than many of his supposed allies. Sir John Soros and John Bolton see it. And one of the other superpowers, Russia, has been warning about this for decades. But too many in the MAGA movement are stuck arguing about whether this is another neocon regime change, instead of recognizing that Trump has just launched the biggest offensive against the City of London since maybe the American Revolution.
They're all tied. This is all a few incredibly wealthy people hiding behind closed doors, using corporations and useful idiots in order to help them with their agenda. Now, there's an incredible economist named Michael Avery. This guy's brilliant. He breaks this down on without any politics being involved, without bringing forward any of the knowledge that the people involved that deal with stocks, trades, dollar, any type of economic policy. He stays completely apolitical, doesn't go forward and throw what everybody should know, which is how all of these cartels, the war machine, the Green New Deal, the carbon scam, all of this is all linked. And in order for a system to correct itself, it has to be hit hard. It can't be done a little bit at a time, because it allows the room in order for these organizations to pivot and slowly just reinvent themselves in another subcategory or sub-investment or another country. It needs to be smashed. Listen carefully to what he has to say.
But it is something that this administration is, as far as I can see, trying to shake the box regarding. What used to be seen as the US offering, which sold very, very well to members of the liberal world order, and not very well to the global south, because frankly, they didn't get much out of it, needs to change in this very, very different world we're in now. So it's yet another of the data points that we need to look at. But what people aren't picking up on that, and this is a huge segue, but I promise you it all links up. It all links up like a kind of a horseshoe. That we've had vis-a-vis Latin America, where we've had Maduro taken out, Cuba's now got the oil embargo. We had, let's say Trump leaning on the scales in the Honduran election, and he's now very friendly with them.
We've definitely intervened to help Argentina.
Definitely intervened to help Argentina. Watch Brazil and their election this year. Can't tell you how important that one is, coming up in October. So all this is going on. But if you read the US national security strategy, and again, you have to look at these documents in terms of guidance. They're aspirational, but they're also important in terms of being directional. That openly says part of what we want to do is make sure that we build bridges to these economies again. And part of the way that we want to do that is by not just having the old-fashioned banana republics, which was the old, imperialismo, Yankee imperialismo, where you get the cheap commodities and you get some tin pot dictator running the country. Everyone hates you, but the dictator loves you. That's out the window.
You keep him happy, he suppresses the country into an iron fist to do what you want him to do. Yeah,
exactly. We know the playbook. We don't want the modern interpretation of that under the liberal world order, which is now we have democracy, the WEF, the IMF, the WTO, et cetera. Everyone follow these rules. Maybe 30%, 25% of your population are going to get rich, but 2/3 are going to get left behind. But now we get your cheap bananas, but we also get cheap T-shirts, and we also get kind of cheap stuff made in in factories in those countries. So a larger proportion of the oligarchy do better, and the middle class behind them. But again, most people are still getting left behind. And again, we'll try and prop up the right political party that says they want to do the right things. That's the playbook that everyone in Europe still loves, for example. That's your liberal world order norm. The national security strategy openly says they want to go back to getting cheap resources because resources are critical. This is another point to discuss in a moment. But they want every country in Latin America to get jobs in industry, which means taking them away from China.
Right.
And they then want jobs locally to make things for locals. So Nicaragua makes things locally for Nicaraguans, Brazil for Brazilians, Argentina for Argentinians. And the US gets to do the same thing. Americans make things for Americans. And then you trade with each other at the margin, which is an utterly, utterly different political, economic, and financial model to the one that we have at the moment. And this story is getting the least play.
So his vision is remove the oligarchs, crush all of the people who are working off of policies made that separate the rich from the poor. Take the people back and give them power, as opposed to what our government likes to do. Stop any type of true freedom and crush any small industry so that they can be gobbled up by large corporations. This is what we saw during the Wuhan. It was meticulously laid out through Carney and Trudeau's policy. Shut down small business to ensure that the little businesses fail. They closed businesses. It was okay for you to go shopping at Costco, but you couldn't go shopping at your Little J's shopping store just down the street. You couldn't go to work unless you were within their category of an essential worker. Every single part of what they were doing was manipulating the markets within a country to solidify a larger share in the large corporations and the people who are invested in them. This is, again, picking the carcasses of everything they destroy, but claiming it's in your best interest, which all the science has come out. It's all been proven that it was all a lie. The shutdowns, everything, it was all a lie. These are all of the things that's been going on. Trump is aware of this. And now, here's the best thing about it is that this just happened today. So I had this scrolling in the background, and when he said it, I was like, this is exactly what the mainstream media doesn't want you to know.
This is the beginning of the golden age. They're going to be reading about this in 100 years. We are in the golden age of America. We got to keep it going. Got to win the midterms. We got to keep it going. Last month, I signed an executive order to ban large Wall Street investment firms from buying large numbers of family homes, single-family homes.
Brookfield owns. They are the largest shareholder. They're the largest company that owns the largest amount of homes in Canada. He's directly going after Carney, Brookfield, and the industrial complex. He is trying to wipe the world order off the map.
No, you'd have these firms go out and buy 2,000 houses. We don't want it. We want you to buy the houses, not them. We're also fighting to pass the Save America Act, my all-time favorite. It's my all-time favorite, the Save America Act.
This is crucial again, because look at what's happening to Canada. If Carney gets a majority government in which the propaganda is trying incredibly hard to give him, they will have enough immigrants here in Canada. We will never have true democracy again. Gone. They've rigged the system. This is replacement. And the only way to ensure, especially in the States, because the way that they've manipulated the voting system, I mean, you don't even have to prove you're an American citizen and you get to vote. What kind of crap is that? How can you live in a democracy like that? They were flooding the country with immigrants. Well, guess what, Canada? We have 10 times the amount per population than they had. And they're getting on this. They're realizing it. They're seeing it at the polls. Canada's got to wake up. We have the same problem. The largest index in Canada for employment is the government. So all of the people that are getting checks from the government are going to vote for the government that wants them to have their useless jobs. Now, not that all of them are useless, but the majority of them are. Then you have the immigrants. You flood them in, you give them citizenship as fast as you can, and you make sure you pick them from violent places so that you can push into Canada all types of high crime, chaos. Again, this falls down into the propaganda. Fear, hate, division, and chaos. This is all part of this is the global cabal. Canada is just not aware of it because it's propaganda. The reality of what's going on. Trump is getting on this. He's trying to save United States. He's trying to ensure that the global order doesn't take complete power. Because if it does, it is and will be a communist style, a socialist style system, which we're already seeing with the way that our rights and freedoms are being diminished every day. Bill C-9, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. They always like to throw these, oh, but we're doing it for the good. Oh, just wait, now with the AI being involved with the Tumbler Ridge, oh, now they're going to be like, well, we have to pass this bill, taking your freedoms away and forcing these companies to do what the government says they can do, or tell the government what these people are doing so that we can control the narrative of that situation. It's all bells and whistles. It's ready. Are you ready? Get the ball so they can pass legislation that goes completely against the people. This is what the global cabal is doing. Trump is trying to shut it down.
but to stop illegal aliens and other unpermitted persons. See, that's a politically correct, unpermitted persons, rather than illegal aliens. They'd rather have us use unpermitted persons. The first time I've ever heard that word, those words. I don't sort of like them, unpermitted persons. Is that the new phrase we're using? Proof of citizenship in order to vote. Voter ID, proof of citizenship. And then third, and I'm telling you, it's the most important, no mail-in ballots except for illness, disability, military, or travel.
Now, look at the mail-in voting here in Canada. One person came forward, only one, with the Terrebonne showing that her vote wasn't counted. What was ever done? Did they look into how many other people got robbed of their vote through mail-in voting? What about other districts and areas? There's piles of people who have complaining online. There's no way to thread any type of reality or prove that there is fraud within the voting system in Canada. You will never know. And when you have a government as corrupt as the Liberals, who have been in power as long as they have, and have appointed the heads of every single organization, have infiltrated every single aspect of Canadians' lives, how could you ever know? There's zero transparency. Now, I'm not saying our voting system is completely rigged. We actually have a very confident voting structure. But we are seeing way more anomalies in the last 4 or 5 years than we've ever seen before in Canada. Literally ballots being found in trunks of vehicles. We're seeing ballots being taken and hauled illegally and transported to different places. We saw what happened in Terrebonne. Wait, these little things need to be fixed. But this isn't what the Liberal Party wants. They need to ensure they stay in power. And they're trying really, really hard to get a majority government so they can cement the power of their corporations and the world global elite, the global cabal, the military industrial complex. They're all the same. The carbon credit crap system. They're all interlinked. They're all tied in with all of the Hamas and all of the drugs and all of that dark money and all of that bad trading. All of it is all tied in down in South America, and where Trump knows he has to crack that open. He has to. It's crucial.
But what the US is looking for is we want ideological alliance, so you're not going to get flaky on us and walk away in a couple of years, physical integration, and direction of capital flows to ensure you have more balanced trade in the long run, because it's hard to get there without the physical investment in the US. This has to happen rather than everyone having the private, free ability to say, well, I want to put my money there. No, you have to put your money here. That's a capital control. It's putting your thumb on the scale, and it's doing it to try and create balance and cohesion. And there will be an in or out effect. If you're in, you're in. And that's how you're going to do it. If you're out, you're out. Don't come knocking on the door. We're not interested. And to say that affects who you should invest in and how you should invest is a massive, massive understatement. Because if countries are on the right side, well, the boxes tick themselves. And to segue to where I think you may be going next, but if not, feel free to go where you want to go. If, for example, you have Canada saying, well, we're going to go and talk to Beijing, and we're going to go and do X, Y, Z instead, that's a whole different ball game with quite possibly deleterious effects in the investment environment and the economy.
He's doing it on purpose. These people are evil. Like, they're evil. That economist nailed it. You're nuts if you think that you can just walk away and try to secure the crumbling ideology through all of the backdoor illegal money laundering, the corrupt carbon schemes, all of the rest of this stuff that has been just tearing the money out of the everyday citizen and lining the pockets of these very wealthy people. You're insane to think you can do that. And you're going against the natural reality of where Western nations need to be going. Everybody knew there needed to be some type of a reset within that system. But the problem was that you had the military industrial complex, the global cabals that were controlling and pushing the narratives in ways that they saw fit. Countries were starting to wake up to that, but they didn't have the power to do anything because the largest economy on the planet, that being the United States, had slowly become infiltrated in order to suit the rich, not the poor. They didn't care about the small countries. They loved the banana republics. They loved the fact that they could just milk everything they wanted out of that country and keep that country suppressed. They could keep a dictatorship in power as long as that person's in power and we get to buy, like he says, right, whatever the widgets or the bananas or whatever. That's fine because we're making the money. And while our industries are crumbling, we get our sub factors, these other dark shadows that are hiding behind that you can't trace have any links to each other, to go in and buy up these companies. This entire system has been built around the corruption of the global cabal, which Carney is. He's like right in there like a dirty shirt.
Mark Carney and your relationship with him while you were Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, and any advice you have to Canadians who think he might make a good Prime Minister.
Well, Mark Carney was Governor of the Bank of England, and under his tenure, too much money was printed, which did damage to the British economy and put our economy off track. He, at the last election, endorsed Rachel Reeves' economic policy. She's now become Chancellor. It's been a disaster for Britain. The country is heading for bankruptcy. So I would strongly recommend not backing Mark Carney or his policies on net zero, which have been disastrous for Britain and would be disastrous for Canada.
Do you trust his judgment overall, outside of ideological considerations?
Well, I believe that he made major mistakes in the management of the Bank of England. He has pushed net zero, which has been a disaster, not just for the UK, but for many countries across the world.
Thanks for your time, Prime Minister. I appreciate it.
He did it on purpose. This is how the cabal makes their money. They try to depreciate the dollar. This is the Soros textbook. And with all of this whole green scare that they've got going on around the world, it makes it even easier for them to do it because they've created a fake carbon credit system. Now, this is another great economist. Listen to his breakdown.
Well, I mean, let's start with the most obvious question, I suppose. What do you make of this idea of middle powers? The countries like Canada, Australia, Japan, the UK, much of the EU, I suppose, and then perhaps even others. Some have floated India, although they're very large. But the idea that these powers can band together to somehow create their own sort of world order.
Well, begin with this. The United States is 1/4 of the world's economy. China is 20% of the world's economy. So these other powers are 55%, a little over half the world's economy. And if you count them as the ones that are above $1 trillion, that's about 8 countries. So that's 8 countries dividing half the world's economy. These are very relatively small countries. And if he wants to extend it, their economies are even smaller. In other words, the idea that somehow these countries can band together and counter both the United States and China, create a new economic form, assumes that their exports being absorbed by just these other middle powers would sustain their economies. Canada, for example, sends about 75% of its exports to the United States, about 15% of exports to China. So if it loses those two, it's got to find markets large enough. And if you consider the middle number, economies that are above $1 trillion GDP, you're counting about 8 other countries. So dividing half the world between these 8 countries, these are not any one of them, or even together, sufficient markets for the rest of the world. So it's one, not doing arithmetic. And secondly, these powers are widely scattered.
You see, so all of these economists know that it is impossible for Canada to join up with these middle powers who have zero part of the global economy and think that they're going to be able to fight and just ignore the United States. It's impossible unless you join up with China. And not a single real economist on the planet sees any type of success in dealing with China. They steal, cheat, they will do everything possible to crush your dollar, to kill your industries. They are the reason that we are in the global position we are in today, because the global cabal has been using cheap exports from around the world, especially China, to flood our markets. And that puts our businesses out of business. There's no money. Our dollars start to fall. Unemployment rises. Right? You get all of the chaos, the poverty. This is the string. This is the web that they are weaving. And if you remove the states, the only way for this to become any type of reality is if they give up their sovereignty to China. And that's what Mark Carney and the media are trying to put out there, that, oh no, we don't worry. Oh no, we have checks and balances, as they all have burner phones in China. There can't be any checks and balances. It is impossible for any of the EU, Canada, and most of the world to try and say, well, we're just not going to deal with the states. It's impossible unless you sell your soul to the devil, which is China. This is the reality. And mainstream is just lying through their teeth as usual, propping up Carney with these ideas that are not only impossible, improbable, but literally will sacrifice your nation for their pocketbooks to be allow our countries to be absorbed by China, destroyed by China.
Well, it really depends on the size of their markets. On an economic point of view, can South Korea compensate for the loss of the Chinese and the American economy for exports and have Germany take the load? The point is, the larger the economy, the more it can absorb, the more it can export, and so on and so forth. These are very small, fragmented economies, very distant from each other, okay, who have only one thing in common, if this were to happen: displeasure at the larger powers, but not a lack of necessity on the larger powers economically and strategically. So this is a wonderful wish that whenever there are great powers, and there are always great powers, the Soviet Union, United States, Britain and France, and so on and so forth, there's always a dream that we don't need to work with them. We can have our own way if we band together. The fact is that the numbers don't add up to that. The market is almost half in the hands of two countries. And if that's an economic reality and a financial reality, you need to deal with it. Mutual contempt is a wonderful tool to use for national security, for national solidarity, I should say. Everybody kind of feels great about it.
That's true, yeah. And I mean, that sort of raises I want to ask your opinion on this, George, is that a couple of weeks ago we had this news that was leaked to the Canadian media, I think, and it was, a deliberate leak from some part of the government, might have been from the top of the government, that Canada had been preparing a strategy for defending against a US invasion of some kind of guerrilla warfare strategy. I mean, obviously I don't think anyone's seriously talking about that as a a large possibility. But what was the purpose of that news coming out? What were they trying to achieve with that, do you think?
Hysteria. I mean, one of the things that politicians do is they want to appear to be strong. They want to be decisive. They protect the nation. The more threats they can imagine that aren't going to materialize, sometimes the more powerful they appear. So it's very important to pay very little attention to what politicians say, because they're politicians, and take a look at the reality on the ground.
They all see this. All of them are aware of the manipulation between the media and the Liberal Party. All of them. They're all seeing it firsthand. They have been warning Canada for, actually, most of them came out before the Liberals won in 2015. They were trying to warn Canada, whoa, you guys, don't vote these people in. Are you aware of who they're involved with? Are you aware of their ideology? We already can forecast and see the damages that are going to be done to your nation, which leaves you susceptible for all of these pariahs, these vultures to come in. And they've been screaming louder and louder and louder, but they've been getting Canadians have been deafened by the propaganda. The propaganda isn't allowing Canadians to realize just how weak we really are. Canada's crumbling. What's better today? Nothing. Carney's been in power almost a year. Not a single law has been changed. No deregulatory process at all. All of the companies that are building are being done so with subsidies from the taxpayers' dollars and have links to liberal investors of the global cabal. This is the end of Canada. If Carney gets his majority government in, he will entomb Canada to our own demise. Trump is warning about this. Canada can't hear it because of the power of propaganda. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. There's a lot to take in, and really, as I always say, make sure that you click on the links and watch these broadcasts in full, because I'm parsing off 90% to kind of highlight the larger portions of them, but there's a lot more to it than what I can show you in around an hour. Canada is in trouble. We have to smack propaganda. We need to destroy it. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. I'm Alias the Guy. You've been watching the Canadian Citizen Journal. Stay informed.